Hello and welcome to Varsity Interviews. My name is Wayne Gautney, pastor to senior adults here at Stetson Baptist Church. And the purpose of Varsity Interviews is for some of you out there who may be watching, that whoever I'm interviewing, that you might say to yourself, well, hey, I never knew that about that person, or we have some things in common. I should strike up a conversation with that person. And so my hope is that through these interviews we'll come to know each other a little bit better and to be able to build some deeper relationships and friendships in the future. So with that in mind, I want to welcome our guest today, Deane Booth. And Deane, welcome. Thank you for taking some time out to come and be a part of this.
You're welcome. Looking forward to it.
All right, so I've got a list of questions here. These are the same questions I've asked everyone so far. And we can get into other topics as we go along, or you know, if it strikes a chord with some other things you want to talk about, feel free. But these are our fallback questions. Okay. All right. So first off, tell us about where you were born and your childhood years.
Okay, I was born in Canton, Ohio. Actually, in the hospital in Canton, Ohio, and I lived in North Industry, which is actually south of Canton, and that area was called Canton South. And so I grew up in that area. Ended up, when I started teaching after college, went back and taught at my high school for 14 years. The original high school that I've gone to.
Don't jump ahead of us now.
Well, we want to go way back to the early childhood.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a long time ago. I'm 76 now. So
I want to know about siblings. I want to know about your parents, your family growing up, and that sort of thing.
We went to church in North Industry Christian Church, and I have a younger sister who was born on St. Patrick's Day. So we always celebrated that. My older brother was 7 years older, and so I kind of looked up to him. He went through, he was way out of high school. In fact, I was in the 8th grade when his first child was born, my niece. So she's not that much younger than I am. So I had a lot of really good friends growing up at school. The elementary school I went to actually was the high school that my parents went to. They built a new high school and converted the high school to an elementary school, and now it is sitting abandoned, that building. I was there 2 years ago, and so it's interesting looking at the old memories, the old house that I grew up in, and it's a long time ago.
Well, tell me about someone maybe outside of your immediate family that had a big impact or an influence on you as a young person.
In high school, I got involved with Youth for Christ. Joe Schultz was the director, and every year they had a athletic competition with Youth for Christ offices from all around the state of Florida, Ohio, and would come into Canton and go to Malone College, and there we would compete basketball and swimming and all sorts of different sports, and so I got involved in that way. And through Youth for Christ, then I had already been baptized and come to Jesus in church, but this really strengthened my background, and I had a much better testimony due to that. And then when I got out of high school into college, I actually worked as a club director for Youth for Christ. I had 4 or 5 different high schools that I would go to.
Wow.
And have meetings, usually at least once a month, and sometimes more often, and introduce Jesus to these high school students that would gather together.
Well, that's amazing, and what an impact for sure. What sort of play or activities or games did you enjoy as a child?
Oh, I wasn't an athlete, but I enjoyed playing baseball and softball and basketball. Church teams played basketball, and I was relatively tall compared to some of them. I was about 6'2", and so I enjoyed doing that. I was in Boy Scouts and spent a lot of time growing up. My dad was the scoutmaster, and he had an explorer post that met in our basement, which was the older kids, my brother and some others. So I saw that influence, and then as I got older, got in the Boy Scouts and earned the God and Country Award, and when I was about 15 or 16. At 16, we went to Boy Scout Jamboree in Colorado Springs, and that was really quite an experience. And again, my dad is really influential in the Boy Scout program. He got to do a lot of things that I didn't get to do. He went to the Jamboree in '64, and my mom and sister and I went and visit while he was there for 2 weeks. And then he would go to Philmont Scout Ranch out in New Mexico. Went there several times, and I never got to go there. So he was very honored in Boy Scouts in our local council.
That's great. So did you make Eagle Scout?
I did not. Interesting. I got a call when I was in college. We need someone on camp staff to be a waterfront director. Swimming and life saving. So I had to go to camping school in Michigan in order to do that, and came back, and I just lost track of where I was going here.
But that kept you from getting
Yes.
to Eagle Scout?
So I kind of got out of Scouts when I was a sophomore in high school. I played in the band and sang in the choir and was really active in the music things. So I kind of got away from Boy Scouts after that trip to Colorado. And so at that time I was the rank of star. And then in college, then I had a chance to go work at camp. I got a call, which I was kind of surprised. We need, a young adult to go in and work. So I went through training. While I was there, I got some merit badges. Then when I got out, I applied to get the Eagle, and they said, "You're over 18. You have aged out." So they did give me the life, because all of the merit badges that I had earned prior to that qualified me for the life badge. So they gave me life. But later, they changed the requirements a lot, and all the merit badges I had would have qualified me for Eagle had I gotten it before I was 18.
So technically you are an Eagle
Yes.
Scout.
Yes. Yes.
Now, this is not one of my questions, but I know that music is a big part of your life.
Absolutely.
And so tell me how that interest came about, and what different facets of music have you been involved in?
Oh, I can remember back in the 3rd grade playing flutophone, like the recorder,
Mm-hmm.
and how badly I was. We had a whole group up on the risers, and that was my first memory of organized music. Then I remember in 6th grade, thinking back, a friend of mine and I sang a duet for a talent show at school, and the music teacher we had then, because elementary was up through 8th grade, and before we went to high school, the high school choir director was teaching music in the elementaries also, at least my elementary. There were 5 elementary schools, and then when I went to high school, then I got involved in the choir, and loved this man. He was very, very talented. And then I played trombone in the band, and eventually through my high school years I was student director of the choir and student director of the band. Then that got me on the track to go into college for engineering.
Engineering?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to be an electrical engineer, and went to college. I was going to go to Ohio University, and already knew who my roommate was going to be, had where everything was going to go. And then I started thinking, this is pretty expensive, and I think I'll stay at home. Went to Malone College, right in town, commuted. And then I was working, my dad got a job, he worked for Ford, and there was a company called Hannon Electric that repaired all their motors and a lot of the service. So he got me a job at this Hannon Electric for the summer, and I would make enough money in the summer to pay for my tuition in college, like $300 a semester. Can you believe that? So that's where we were going from there. Worked, and then I have to apologize. I keep drifting off, and I'm not
No,
where
but
we were
I know-
going with this.
I know you sing in the choir.
Yes.
You what are in as far as the church setting anyway? What have been your involvement with through music?
Okay. Well, let's back up. I just remember where I was going with that. In college, I was in electrical engineering, so I spent a year and a half failing in physics and calculus. D's and got it. The only F I ever got was in calculus. Well, I stayed in calculus for the second semester, and I actually got a D. So somewhere I caught up.
You improved.
I figured it out somewhere. Everything that I'd missed in the first semester, but then I realized this is I'm not going anywhere. This is not going to do it. So music. I loved music, so sang in the choir, played in the band, and we had a group that would go out and travel to churches. And my roommate, who was also played in the band with me in high school, trombone player right next to me in high school, would preach, and then a group of us would sing for churches, and I really enjoyed that.
Fabulous. Tell me about your salvation experience. How young were you? What was there a pivotal moment there that brought you to Christ?
I was baptized at 12 in church, and we had a very strong. My dad didn't go to church because he thought the pews were too hard. My mom taught 3- and 4-year-olds, so she never got to worship. She was really at a lower level of worship with little ones, but she did a great job. She did that for like 40 years. But we had a very strong youth group, and then also Boy Scouts was very influential there. So at 12, I received Christ and was baptized, but mentioned earlier that through Youth for Christ, then in high school, really got a rejuvenation, I think. Really got to focus on the Christian life, and meeting with Joe Schultz that I mentioned before, when before we would have our big meeting with couple hundred high school students would come in together and do the big rally. We would pray, and I really felt, tingles when we would go through that. If you may know what
Yes,
I'm referring
absolutely.
to there. That was, and those were exciting times that really strengthened my belief and going forward there.
Well, that is awesome, and you've certainly had an impact at this church, and I'm sure many others that you've served at and been a member of. How did you meet your spouse, and what attracted you to her?
She was singing in a trio at Malone College. She was from California, Bell, California, outside of Los Angeles. And she and her cousin, first cousin, very close, and 2 other members of their friend's church came to Malone, which at that time was was supported by the Friends Church, Quaker. And so, but it was my local college, so we met there. I saw her sing in a trio, and we dated and then broke up, and she dated a couple other guys, and I dated a couple other girls, and then I went climbing up the stairs to her apartment and just, I need you. And and she finally said yes, and we got married. The summer that I graduated, she graduated the year before that I did, because of changing from engineering into music. I lost 2 years. I was suspended for
I was going to ask you
a semester.
when that change happened,
Yes.
and what it cost you to make that switch.
I was actually suspended for a semester. I had a 1.987 GPA.
Now, don't feel bad. In college, I went in to do computers, technology, and I had pre-calculus. I had a professor from Hungary, and I could not even understand the man, and it was a dismal failure. I got an F. I got down to a 1.6 grade point average, an academic probation, and decided to make the switch to art and a minor in music.
Yeah. Well, 2.0.
Made the dean's list the next semester.
Well, yeah, 2.0 was necessary to move on, and I had 1.987, and they wouldn't let me. So I worked full time for that semester. Came back the next year, lived in the dorm, and because I did not have study, I never learned in high school how to study. It just came naturally. Math and science and everything was easy for me in high school, but I got to college and it was more advanced than what I could compensate for. So we met there, and then we got married in 1968, the year that I graduated from college. I was working in Boy Scout camp that summer. That was my second year, and I broke my foot. It was a silly thing. I was showing people how high I could jump over things. So I was jumping over a stone fireplace, which was about this high, and it was wet, and my foot slipped, and I caught my foot on the edge of the stone, because I tried to catch myself, and it broke away. So my momentum carried me right over. My foot hit and crushed 7 bones in the top of my foot. And when I stood up, I said, "There's something wrong here." So they took me to the doctor and hospital in town, and fortunately, the best bone surgeon in the county was there. And he reset it, put it in a cast. So I spent the last month of camp with a cast on my leg, teaching swimming and boating, canoeing. So I had a plastic bag around my cast, and I didn't have to go in the water. I had 2 guys on staff that would do that. So it was supposed to be on for 6 weeks, and my wedding was in California in 6 weeks. So 3 days before we were going to California, they took my cast off. So I flew out to California using a cane because my leg had atrophied. Mm-hmm. And I was singing. I sang to Kathy as she came down the aisle. "Ah, sweet mystery of life, at last I found you." I hated that song, but that's what she wanted me to sing. So I had the words printed and on the front pew, and the organist was just incredible. He was a professional organist and had built this theater organ, had taken a theater organ and rebuilt it, and had one in his home also, with all the pipes and everything.
Oh, wow.
So I lost my way halfway through the second verse and just improvised, and he went right along with me. and we got
Nobody,
through it.
none were the wiser.
And she walked down the aisle, and we got married. And they show me, limping as we walked back out the aisle, favoring that leg. In a couple of weeks, it was back to normal, but that was quite an experience. August 16th, 1968.
Fabulous. What has been your life vocation, and why did you choose it?
Well, music. Got a degree in Bachelor's of Science in Music Education. Got a job in a little country school, East Canton, just obviously east of Canton. Small school, 300 and some students in the high school. There weren't enough classes for me to teach the whole thing, so I ended up teaching math and science because of my background. And for the first, I was there 3 years, and for the first year I was teaching 10th grade math and ninth grade physical science. Well, physical science I had about 12 students because there were 42 students signed up. So the other teacher took the top 30 and I got the bottom 12. Of those 12, 3 of them actually graduated eventually from high school. So that was a challenge of teaching physical science to students who were not motivated and were not at the top of their level, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, we did a couple field trips, and I really had to adapt the curriculum to fit what their needs were and what their level of education was, and to try to make it worthwhile. And I think it did, but a lot of the kids ended up dropping out of school and just weren't motivated. So the next 2 years then I expanded my program, my classes and choir, and then after 3 years I got a call from the choir director at my high school. Not the original one, but the man who was there, and pretty successful. He says, I want to give up the choir directing and get into library and recording and audiovisual. He said, I want you to apply for the job. I said, okay, that's pretty cool. So I went and interviewed with the superintendent. At that time I had what they call flanges, the long sideburns down here. And so during the interview he looked at me and said, we here have higher standards. You're going to have to shave those flanges off. Now, it was about a $3,000 pay increase from $6,000 to $9,000 a year. This was in 1970, 71. And I said, sure, I'll shave them off. I have no problem with that, no problem with that. And so I went back to my high school with plaques on the wall that I helped and pictures of musicals that I had participated in. It was just a really fond memory. So we continued the program. We did a Broadway musical every other year, and my choirs competed. I had solos and ensembles and some groups that really got superior ratings regularly, and went to state contests multiple times, and then I became actually adjudicator, a judge for solo and ensemble and for district contests. I never got to do a state, but I was there 14 years,